Hello and welcome to Smatter. This is Mark and I'll be reviewing Black Christmas, a horror movie from 1974. Many people consider this to be the original slasher film. This is a horror classic and it directly influenced Halloween and many other slasher films like Friday the 13th. So this is like going back and finding out where all the influences came from. It's a fantastic movie. It was directed by Bob Clark, who's well known for directing A Christmas Story, another famous Christmas movie. Also, he directed Porky's, which was a teen sex comedy in the early 80s, and it was the start of the teenage sex comedy craze of the 80s, and it was very influential. And you'll see that this movie, Black Christmas, was highly influential in creating the slasher genre. So it's pretty cool. If you look back on some of the stuff he's made in the past, he's made serious movies, he's made funny movies, he's made some classics. So, you go back, check him out, the late, great Bob Clark. Moving on to the actors, we have Margot Kidder, John Saxon, Andrea Martin, and Olivia Hussey. And this is before Margot Kidder played Lois Lane in Superman. And this is after John Saxon was in Enter the Dragon. Andrea Martin, she became a big-time comedian later on in the 80s. And Olivia Hussey, all I really remember her from was from Romeo and Juliet in the late 60s. Moving on, now each of these actors plays their characters just fine. John Saxon is dependable as always as the sheriff, and he's dependable, fine. Olivia Hussey, she plays it very straight, very vanilla. Andrea Martin doesn't stand out at all. She kind of like almost blends into the background. But Margot Kidder, she stands out only because I know her so well as Lois Lane, and you might know her as well as Lois Lane. And she really plays against that character. She plays an angry, kind of drunk, kind of a mean person. It's very refreshing. Let's get to the plot. Now, as far as plot goes, it's a bunch of sorority women in a sorority house getting killed off one by one. And very much a slasher film, very much a slasher film plot. But this is a little bit before my time, so I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe this was the original one. This is the one that started it all. I don't know. Maybe there's other ones before this, but I think this is the one that got the whole thing going. So when you think of a house where it's, people get knocked off one by one in a static location, this might be the one that started it all. And so when you look back, this was very refreshing. This was very new. This is something revolutionary back in that time. And now we take it for granted that like every slasher film, every horror movie is the same thing. People in an isolated area, people hunted down one by one, people not knowing what's going on, everyone oblivious. We have the bad girl, the good girl. We have the people that you root for to get killed, the people that you root for not to get killed. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool movie. When this movie first starts, we get a static camera with someone walking into the sorority house. And we think that the camera is going to switch over to a view of inside the house and we're going to be in the house with them and kind of learn the characters and everything. But that's not what happens. What ends up happening is the camera becomes our eyes. Well, it always is our eyes, but it actually starts moving in a first person viewpoint. And we start hearing moaning, dragging feet, bumping into stuff. We start seeing through the windows and we get very little of the conversations happening inside. We get none of that. We're seeing it purely from the killer's point of view, and it's pretty darn creepy. It's so dark, and it's supposed to be a joyous time, it's supposed to be a festive time, but all we really get is muted colors, shadows, darkness. And when the killer starts climbing up the side of the building and we're looking at it through his viewpoint, it's very disorienting. And it may be cliche now, but back then I'm guessing it really threw people for a loop. When I started watching this movie, I thought, well, we're going to get a lot of exposition. We're going to learn about these people. We're going to learn to care, who to care about. The standard stuff that we get nowadays. We get explained everything. I honestly feel like I only know these characters from these 2 days and these few minutes that we get with them, and I don't get some other character telling me the other person's life story, their actions from before. I don't get their way of thinking. It's a very dry movie, very serious movie. You feel very much like you fell into the middle of a conversation and you don't know what's going on, which I got to tell you, I really love this about this movie. I really love the fact that I don't know who to root for. I'm not being told who to root for. I'm not being told who to care for. And I just get to make up my own mind, which is great. This is the first time the story was told, and from this point of view, from this genre. We, as a audience, We didn't know what was going on. It all happens so fast. It all starts so fast. Someone gets killed like almost 5 minutes into the movie, but for some reason, no one like really misses her or checks up on her. I'm guessing that they just figure she retired for the night. So from then on, like the movie just goes, and you're supposed to think there's a killer on the loose in the house. He's kind of hiding out in the attic, kind of coming down and killing people at will. It's so creepy. Everything's first person. You get like there's very little music, very little atmospheric sounds. It's mostly creaking, walking around, his breathing. It's very strange. It's very creepy, like I said before. And I tell you, it works. It works like a charm. The whole time you're like, wow, this guy's nuts. And then he just does this weird shrieking stuff, and he keeps calling the house. And I guess this is based on the same story that the movie When a Stranger Calls, about the babysitter and the guy calling from inside the house. This is based on that same story. That's almost exactly what happens. This guy's in the house. He's calling from inside the house, making these weird, obscene phone calls. But then he eventually turns like really strange, making different voices. He sounds like a woman, sounds like a guy, but he just ends up screaming the same kind of things. But it's all gibberish nonsense. And there's like some kind of backstory in that, but we don't get that. We don't get what it's all about. And that's, like I said, that's what makes it so great, because sometimes there just is no good reason for things to happen. And that's what this movie kind of is really good at exploring. Sometimes you just don't get answers. And that's, once again, it makes this movie a classic. So anyway, he starts bumping people off, and you start wondering, wow, is this guy ever going to get caught? We have the sheriff learning where is it coming from? Where you're getting obscene phone calls? Where are they coming from? And then eventually they find out it comes from the house. It's a slow burn, and it's great the whole time. It's suspenseful because you don't know when things are going to happen. There's like no rhyme or reason, and the killer doesn't seem to be in a hurry. The people in this movie never really realize that multiple people are being knocked off. They only think that the one person was missing, the girl from the beginning, the original opening. But other than that, there's no real sense of urgency on the people's part in the movie, and there's no real urgency on the side of the killer either, because just happy to just sit in the attic waiting to kill the next person. It's pretty darn cool. So anyway, it leads to a really cool ending, and I don't want to blow it, but I got to tell you, go ahead and watch this movie. If you're wondering where a lot of the cliches, the tropes from these kind of movies came from, this is it. You'll see a lot of the original stuff happening in this movie. You'll see the first person view, the crazy killer making weird phone calls, stalking people. You'll see people oblivious. You'll see some of the cliche characters. You'll see the sheriff. You'll see all these different characters. They even have the police officer stationed outside so nothing can happen. And then they keep looking outside going, oh, the sheriff's still outside watching us. We must be safe. Don't worry about anything. But then it turns out, of course, later on you find out that the person in the police officer in the car was murdered. It's all cliche now. But back then, I would guess it was pretty crazy back then. Anyway, go see it. You'll see where all your influences came from. Fantastic movie. I know I keep harping on about the influences, but it really matters. You always got to know where you came from. And if you're a horror fan, this is the kind of thing that you're going to look back on and go, wow, I remember this from Black Christmas. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a good day.